So, this is very sad news with the passing of John Prine, and I wanted to say something that his song about Muhlenberg County, in particular, the song "Paradise," got me thinking about, and it has to do with my own love of my home state or home Commonwealth of Kentucky, and where that all came from. Uh, I think I'd always liked being from Kentucky. Growing up, I didn't see a problem with it. Um, I had relatives in Lexington as well as Harlan County within the state, and visited both areas of Kentucky, Lexington and Harlan, fairly frequently. I grew up in Louisville. I remember eighth grade, because we'd had some previous eighth grade classes that maybe were a little rowdy on their class trips to like Washington, D.C. or Kings Island. We did a trip to Mammoth Cave and a Green River boat tour, and I liked that, as much as it wasn't maybe an amusement park or certainly the nation's capital. I liked it, but I think I heard the song Muhlenberg County, or Paradise, which features the Muhlenberg County, for the first time in my senior year of high school. But part of the reason I heard it was because my roommate at a program called Governor Scholars, the Kentucky Governor Scholars Program, was from Muhlenberg County. And, I'd been to tennis camps at UK and met people from different parts of the state and played tennis tournaments in the summers and would play in Owensboro or play in Elizabethtown or Lexington, as well as just general travels you would do. But Governor Scholars, I got to meet people from all over the state and had a great 5-week experience. It certainly changed some trajectories in my life at that time. At 44 now, I'm a husband and a father, and have gone to graduate school and undergraduate school and another graduate school and other things like that. I wouldn't say, it's hard to compare those types of things, but at 17 years of age, it was very influential. And I still have, several people I keep in touch with from that program, via either social media or actual in-person contact. But that program, getting to meet people from all over the state, spending 5 weeks in northern Kentucky, which at the time was the first time I'd spent any significant time in northern Kentucky, whereas that's a part of the state that's been a big part of my life in terms of my youngest son was born in northern Kentucky. My wife and my two older children have certainly lived in northern Kentucky as well, and I've taught at 3 great schools in northern Kentucky: St. Henry District High School, Notre Dame Academy, as well as Thomas More, now University. It was college when I taught there. I guess they had to wait for me to leave to like, we got to get rid of that Martin guy to make our move to university status. But when I moved to Louisville, I stopped working at Notre Dame as well as Thomas More in northern Kentucky. And I worked at the Walden Books at the Florence Mall for a couple of years in 2002 through 2004. So I have a lot of great memories of northern Kentucky, but this love of Kentucky that I acquired around the age of 17 or 18 coincided with 2 other things. One was, I think that the height of Rick Pitino's time at the University of Kentucky was going on as I was finishing high school and throughout my first 3 years of college, in which Kentucky won a national title my sophomore year of college and was national runner-up my junior year. And so I went to Georgetown University in Washington, D.C. That's the second thing. And I lived in a dorm with each floor. It was a 4-floor dorm, New South, if to any Georgetown people out there. And the dorm had, probably 125 or more students per floor. So you're talking, 500 students in the building. And there were several Dans in the building and several Dans on campus. And, I tended to wear some UK T-shirts and such around campus for their basketball prowess and whatnot. I'm a big UK fan. I always have been. I think this is probably just being older and being a high school teacher. It's harder to get excited about college sports than when I was younger, maybe. But I still enjoy it when I get a chance to watch or follow those things, whether it's University of Kentucky, University of Dayton, you name it. I do enjoy college basketball, but people started, if they referred to me, they're like, oh, I'm going to, get notes from Dan because I was sick for class today, or I'm going to go to the student center or the gym or whatever with Dan, and people are like, well, which Dan? And sort of, I became Dan from Kentucky at first, and then that got shortened to Kentucky Dan. And this was a moniker that I didn't seek it out, but I really, liked it, and it became pretty defining of my 4 years of college. I mean, a lot of people called me that, or variations of it. Some people called me KYD or Bluegrass. I remember a couple people called me that, but mainly Kentucky Dan, and or sometimes they just call me Kentucky, like I guess I'm like Indiana Jones or something, minus the archaeology and swashbuckling adventures. I don't have either of those things, but that I feel like I was a really good ambassador for the state of Kentucky too while I was in college. Maybe I was a little bit uncritical in some ways. If it was kind of like, if it's from Kentucky, it's good. So like Goldfinger, like, oh wow, they got scenes at Fort Knox, and they mentioned Bourbon and Branch. That's great. The Kentucky Derby is great. Kentucky basketball is great. Louisville basketball is great. Western Kentucky, blah, 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 blah. I was just kind of like a number one cheerleader for my state. And there's a reason for that. And part of it had to do with just a lot of people didn't know a heck of a lot about Kentucky. And I was involved in spring break in Appalachia for 3 years, and did service work in the state of Kentucky 3 years for my spring break in college. And the thing I'll say about that, especially having roots in Harlan County that go back to the 1700s, when an ancestor of mine got a land grant after the Civil War and moved from Virginia to what is today Harlan County. I felt like this is me giving back. I was a congressional intern for Mike Ward, who was the 3rd District's congressman from Kentucky, and I felt like that was giving back. Like, I'm Kentucky Dan. I was named a Kentucky colonel in college for that reason, and so that was a great honor. And I you can hear my son maybe in the background, Ethan. So at any rate, I was really a big proponent of all things Kentucky. But after college, during college, a lot of people just didn't know a lot about Kentucky. So I felt like if anything, and maybe I'm just the one person somebody's going to encounter in the next 5 years from Kentucky, and I better be a pretty good representative of my hometown, my home state, my alma mater, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I remember my first week of college. It may have even been the first day. I met a guy, and he was from Pennsylvania, and he asked me. He's like, "I've never met anybody from Kentucky before." He's like, "Do you wrestle alligators?" And I thought that was a funny comment. He was serious. I think his view of the South was maybe it's just all a giant swampy, humid place. And Louisville certainly is humid in the summers and whatnot. My son Ethan may be joining us here. Hello to Ethan, and he probably wants me to do this. Here we go. All right, go ahead. I'm making a video, so that's my daughter Karina asking me a question. So at any rate, there was a fair amount of just kind of innocent ignorance about the state of Kentucky, and I was happy to be able to address any of that. And certainly John Prine and his song would be something I would be completely proud of, and still am proud of. But after I got out of college, I moved back to Louisville for a year. So being Kentucky Dan didn't make much sense. The whole nickname didn't make sense. I had a friend visit me from college, Brian Held, who is a good man. He teaches at Loyola High School out in Los Angeles. And he called me Kentucky Dan in front of some of my friends, and they just were like, that makes no sense. Ethan, can you please take that somewhere else if you're going to play it? It's awfully loud. Ethan, go. It's just too loud. Thank you. So, it was a role in my life that I enjoyed, but, and maybe I know like Michael Cuneo, who's a sociologist, I helped him with some stuff as his graduate assistant, and he said he was going to put me in his books as Kentucky Dan Martin in the acknowledgments. I don't know if that's ever happened. I know the one book, when it went from hardcover to paperback, they just wanted to do a straight textual change, and he tried to change it and he wouldn't. And I know he told me in 2017 that his kids were visiting Cincinnati. He's from Toronto, Canada, and he insisted that they cross the bridge so they could spend a few minutes at least in Kentucky. So, you know, that when I was working at UD, at least a few people in Dayton thought of me as Kentucky Dan, I guess. But for the most part, that has not really been a big issue in my life. But between the unfortunate and tragic loss of John Prine to the coronavirus, but also the great pulling together that we've seen in my home state, the great leadership I believe we've seen from Governor Beshear in Kentucky, I'm very proud to look back on that and say maybe I've been a little too quick to, there's landscaping going on while I'm doing this video, but maybe I've been a little too quick. These are the production values that we've come to expect. But maybe I've been a little too quick to just assume, okay, I live in Kentucky. They probably don't need a Kentucky Dan. Like, we don't need that. But, you know, maybe I need to be a little bit more of a cheerleader and ambassador for my state again. While also, I think, you know, I was a little uncritical at times when I was in high school or college with this whole thing. There are things about Kentucky or any other place that should be challenged and should be pushing toward a better state of existence for us. Ethan, how are you? I was just about to wrap up. Do you want to say bye to everybody? But basically, here I am from Louisville, Kentucky, and there's my daughter Karina if she wants to get into the camera. Kentucky Karina and Kentucky Ethan coming on in. And basically, you know, maybe people like Andy Beshear, people like John Prine have reawakened something in me, which is not that I ever lost that pride about where I'm from, but are there ways that I can be a really good representative of where I'm from, and also, you know, be the type of person that's going to say, look, we've got a lot of great things going on here, but can we do better? How do we do better as a community? And that's something that I'm hoping to do in wake of both the great pulling together that I've seen in the Commonwealth of Kentucky during the pandemic and social distancing protocols, but also due to the very sad passing of John Prine. And I owe it at least to my roommate from Governor Scholars, who's from Muhlenberg County, to make some sort of effort to improve the state around me, but also to be a great encourager of what this state is and what it can be. Thank you for your time. I hope you have a great day, and keep safe and keep well.